So imagine waking up and before you've even had your first cup of coffee, an invisible assistant has already read like 5,000 local news articles.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it's flagged a critical spike in river pollution, updated your centralized database, and get this drafted a press release for your approval.
Which is, I mean, that's just a massive amount of work.
Exactly. It sounds like complete science fiction. Or at least, the kind of luxury only a massively funded multinational organization would have.
Yeah, you think you need a whole department for that.
But today's mission for this deep dive is to unpack an incredibly practical, honestly game-changing set of notes centered on environmental impact and technology. And it proves this is entirely accessible to you right now.
It really is. The shift we're seeing is wild.
It is. We are exploring the leap from basic reactive AI tools to what are known as autonomous AI agents. And to get our heads around this transition, I like to think about it this way. If a standard AI chatbot is, well, it's like a really smart intern sitting at a desk waiting for you to hand them a specific task, right?
Yeah, waiting for instructions.
Exactly. But an AI agent is like a proactive project manager who already knows the ultimate goal and just, starts doing the work.
That framing actually hits the architectural difference perfectly. We really need to draw a strict line here between a tool and an agent.
Right.
Because that intern model, that's what most people are using today. Large language models that absolutely require a prompt.
You have to tell it what to do every single time.
Exactly. You ask the model to, say, summarize a PDF, it processes the text, outputs the summary, and then it essentially goes to sleep.
It just stops.
Yeah, it's completely dormant until you give it another instruction. But an AI agent, on the other hand, is defined strictly as a system that takes a goal and acts on it repeatedly without needing that constant micromanagement.
So it's just running in the background.
Yeah, it utilizes application programming interfaces, or APIs, to maintain these long-running loops. So instead of asking for a one-off summary, you instruct an agent to collect new environmental data every day, organize it, analyze it, and prepare outputs.
And it just keeps going.
Right. The system executes this loop continuously.
So it shifts from a simple transaction to an ongoing operation. And because, our audience already understands the basics of language models, I want to dive straight into the deep end of why you listening right now should care about this shift.
Yeah, because it's highly relevant today.
Exactly. Our sources present this not as some abstract computer science theory, but as a really practical toolkit. It's designed to transform how research and conservation work actually gets done on the ground. The overarching mission here is ending that crushing feeling of information overload that comes with tracking environmental data.
Which is, frankly, a very real operational bottleneck for anyone in this field.
Totally.
But implementing a system that operates continuously in the background, I mean, it sounds like an IT nightmare.
Right. The immediate assumption is you need like a massive tech team, a sprawling budget, and months of custom software development just to build anything resembling a proactive project manager.
But the source material completely flips that script. And this is key. The accessibility revelation in these notes is probably the most disruptive part of the entire concept.
Yeah, because the sources explicitly state that you do not need to be a programmer. You don't need a big budget.
None of that.
They point out that these agents can be built using platforms like ChatGPT through their custom GPT's feature, or Claude, and then linked to simple automation platforms.
Yeah, tools like Zapier or Make.
Right. And that connects the AI's processing power directly to everyday software like Google Sheets. But wait, let me push back for a second. If there's literally no coding required, does this mean the only real barrier to entry is just like our ability to clearly articulate and describe the workflow we want?
That is the core premise, yeah. Though, I mean, the reality of no code still requires a highly logical mindset.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, you don't need to know Python or C++i, but you do need to be incredibly precise in your natural language instructions. If you can map out a workflow logically, like step 1, look here, step 2, extract this data, step 3, format it this way, you can build an agent.
So natural language is basically the new programming language.
Exactly. The limiting factor is no longer the technology stack. It's your imagination and your ability to define the process.
That's empowering.
Very. It empowers you to start experimenting immediately. I mean, if you know the repetitive parts of your job, you can literally codify them into an agent.
So let's dig into the mechanics of that, moving from how accessible these tools are to what that imagination actually looks like in practice. Because in environmental research, the absolute heaviest lift is always gathering and managing massive amounts of unstructured data.
Oh, absolutely. It's tedious, it's highly prone to human error, and it just devours time.
It really does.
It's the friction point where most projects just stall out. And the notes highlight a specific consulting use case that illustrates how this bottleneck gets cleared.
Walk us through that.
So an environmental consultant typically spends hours every week just wrangling data sets. Using an agent, they can set up a system that automatically creates, maintains, and updates Google Sheets.
Okay, but we've had automation for Sheets before.
Right, but the critical mechanism here isn't just, copying and pasting data. It's the automated cleaning and structuring of incoming data on a daily or weekly basis.
Oh, man. And anyone who has ever managed a database knows that cleaning data is notoriously the worst part of the job.
The absolute worst.
Dealing with mismatched date formats, sensor inputs, using different units of measurement, typos, it's a nightmare. So how is the agent actually handling that cleaning process autonomously?
It all comes down to how large language models process information. When you use a traditional automation tool to move data, it's very rigid.
Right, it breaks easily.
Exactly. If a sensor outputs a date as, say, 05-04-2026, and your database requires May 4th, a traditional script just crashes.
Because it doesn't match perfectly.
Yeah. But when you insert an AI agent into the loop, the model uses its semantic understanding. It actually recognizes that those two formats represent the exact same chronological concept.
Oh, that's incredibly smart.
It is. So you just instruct the agent, like, review all incoming data from this webhook, standardize all dates to month to year, convert all metric measurements to imperial, and drop it into the designated columns.
And it just does it.
Yeah. The agent applies that logical parsing to every single piece of incoming data before it ever hits your spreadsheet.
So the data arriving in your sheet is already normalized. I love that. But it goes a step further, right? Because the notes mention you can instruct the agent to flag anomalies or trends.
Yes, and this is where the proactive element we talked about really shines. Instead of a human staring at thousands of rows of water quality measurements trying to spot an irregularity.
Which is mind-numbing.
Totally. The agent runs an evaluation against historical baselines every single time new data arrives. So if it spots a sudden spike in nitrogen levels, it doesn't just log it in the spreadsheet.
What does it do?
It triggers an alert. It brings the anomaly directly to human attention. So it acts less like a passive database and more like, say, a triage nurse.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. It evaluates the severity of the incoming information, categorizes the problem, and decides what actually needs your immediate human attention.
That is massive for consulting or institutional research. But the source material also dives into citizen science, which it highlights as this huge opportunity. And frankly, this is where the sheer scale of the technology gets a bit wild.
Citizen science is fundamentally about scale, yeah.
Yeah.
It's everyday people reporting what they see out in nature.
Right, like someone spots a rare bird, or another person photographs a localized flood.
Or someone blogs about a specific plant blooming 3 weeks early. The problem has always been that aggregating all those fragmented, localized observations across a million different platforms is just an absolute nightmare.
You'd need an army of interns to read all that.
Exactly. But our sources outline how you can build an agent that creates a real-time living database by constantly pulling data from all these disparate sources.
We are talking about local newspapers, personal blogs, platforms like iNaturalist, social media feeds. It's literally like having an invisible army of digital research assistants scouring the entire internet 24/7 to build a living ecosystem database.
That captures the scale perfectly.
Yeah.
And let's break down the causal mechanism of how that invisible army actually operates. Because it's not just doing a simple keyword search.
Right, it's deeper than that.
Much deeper. If you want to track a specific invasive species, say the spotted lanternfly, a traditional search engine just looks for those exact words.
And it misses everything else.
Yeah. But an AI agent is processing unstructured human text. It might read a local gardening blog that says, saw a bunch of weird gray bugs with red underwings decimating my grapevines today.
Wait, so it doesn't even say spotted lanternfly?
No. But the LLM understands the context. It identifies the species through its training data describing those physical characteristics, and then it actually converts that qualitative story into a quantitative data point.
That is unbelievable. So it extracts the location, the date, and the species, and outputs it as structured data into your Google Sheet.
Exactly. And it automatically appends the original source link, so the human researcher can go in and verify the information. It continuously runs this loop,
That saves so much time.
weeks or months of time.
Mhm.
Instead of paying a team of graduate students to manually scour the web and retroactively compile a spreadsheet, a single person can build a system that provides real-time visibility.
Right, because by the time a traditional research team compiles a month's worth of citizen science data, the environmental event they are tracking might already be over.
Exactly. The agent provides an immediate, continuous pulse on the ecosystem.
Okay, so what we are seeing here is how data collection handles the inbound research. It really solves the problem of taking the noisy, unstructured world and formatting it into something useful.
Yeah, that's the inbound side.
But if we pivot from inbound to outbound work, the reality is that managing an NGO or leading an environmental initiative isn't just about looking at perfectly structured spreadsheets.
Not at all.
The daily grind is communications. It's outreach, keeping stakeholders informed, maintaining your own personal organization.
The sources address this directly with the concept of a communications agent, because outbound communication is almost always the first thing that falls through the cracks when environmental workers get busy in the field.
Oh, absolutely.
You have all this great field data, but literally no time to synthesize it for the public. So you can set up an agent to monitor a specific folder, a folder where you just drop your raw field notes, your quick audio memos, or even your recent social media snippet.
It's a total brain dump folder.
Exactly. And the agent takes those raw materials and automatically drafts daily media releases, stakeholder updates, and outreach emails.
It translates all that dense field jargon into accessible public messaging, which means when you finally sit down at your computer, the blank page is already filled.
Which is the hardest part of writing.
It really is. You have press-ready summaries just waiting for you to review. And actually, speaking of the morning routine, the notes describe something called the 7 a.m. Daily Intelligence Report.
Oh, this is a great feature.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that because it sounds incredibly potent.
The 7 a.m. report is a perfect example of chaining different agent capabilities together. So imagine every morning at 7 a.m., you receive a single automatically generated PDF document.
Okay.
To build this, the agent runs an autonomous script, starting around, say, 6:30 a.m. It uses APIs to securely ping your calendar, pulling your schedule for the day.
Got it.
Then it pings your email inbox, filtering out all the spam and noise, and summarizing only the high-priority messages that actually require your response.
That alone would save me an hour.
Right. And finally, it runs a targeted search across environmental news databases, pulling global developments directly relevant to your specific organization's focus.
So it aggregates all of those separate data streams, formats them into a clean layout, converts it to a PDF, and drops it in your inbox right before you wake up.
Yes. The cognitive load of simply figuring out what you need to do or what tab to open first is entirely lifted. You aren't switching between 5 different apps or getting distracted by scrolling through news feeds.
You just open one document.
You open one document and your entire operational landscape for the day is clearly defined.
Okay, I have to jump in here and push back a little bit.
Sure.
Waking up to a clear 7 a.m. PDF sounds like an absolute dream for personal organization. But having an AI automatically fire off press releases and outreach emails, that sounds like a PR disaster waiting to happen.
Go for sure.
Because an AI doesn't understand the political sensitivities in a local community. It doesn't grasp the subtle nuances of stakeholder relationships. Where is the quality control in this automated outbound workflow?
That is a highly critical vulnerability. And the source material explicitly validates that concern. It includes a very strong warning regarding any outward-facing automation.
What's the warning?
You should always keep control. The goal of an agent is not to replace human judgment or to operate blindly without oversight.
So how do you actually architect the workflow to prevent an automated PR disaster?
The rule of thumb outlined in the text is the human-in-the-loop model.
Human in the loop. Okay.
Yeah. The workflow must always be configured as drafts, reviewed by you, and then sent. From a technical standpoint, this means the agent executes 99% of the heavy lifting.
Right.
It gathers the data, it formats the email, it queues it up in your drafts folder, and then, crucially, the automation pauses. It waits for an asynchronous approval.
So it's acting as a highly efficient drafter, but it's not the final decision maker.
Correct. The agent solves the tedious part, staring at a blinking cursor, trying to remember the formatting for a media release, synthesizing the bullet points.
Yeah, getting past the blank page.
Exactly. But the final mile, the strategic judgment of whether a specific message strikes the right tone for a specific community at that specific moment, that remains entirely human.
Because the AI just doesn't know. Right. You review the draft, maybe tweak a sentence for nuance, and then you hit send. You preserve the authenticity and safety of the communication while completely stripping away the administrative burden of generating it from scratch.
The invisible army drafts the battle plan, but the general still has to approve it before anyone actually marches.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That distinction makes a lot of sense. So, having explored the what and the how, the continuous data gathering, the real-time parsing of citizen science, the automated drafting, and those 7 a.m. intelligence reports, we need to zoom out to the overarching why.
The big picture.
Yeah, because even if this doesn't require a computer science degree, setting all of this up still takes thought. It takes real effort to logically map out these workflows and test the natural language prompts. Why go through the effort of building these automated systems in the first place? What is the ultimate ROI for an organization?
The text boils the return on investment down to 3 key pillars: time, consistency, and better decisions.
Let's break those down. The first is time. By removing manual data entry, formatting, and initial drafting, we are talking about reclaiming hours of human capital every single day.
Which is invaluable.
Huge. The second pillar is consistency. Human beings are, we're biological organisms. We get tired, we get pulled into emergencies, we get sick.
Right, life happens.
Exactly. And when a human gets busy, the data tracking often stops. But an agent runs reliably, 24/7, operating in the background, regardless of how chaotic the real world gets.
I can easily see how time savings and consistency are guaranteed if the system is working properly, but I'd push back on that third pillar: better decisions.
Oh.
Yeah, does the source address how automation actually leads to better decisions, rather than just helping us make bad decisions faster due to automation bias?
That's a fair point. It addresses it directly through the lens of data latency.
Data latency.
Yeah. Because your agent is constantly updating the database, perfectly structuring the incoming noise, and immediately alerting you to anomalies, you're operating with a real-time map of the territory.
Oh, I see.
You aren't making a resource allocation decision based on an incomplete spreadsheet from last month. You are making decisions based on what is actually happening in the ecosystem at this exact moment.
So the speed of the data processing tightens the feedback loop.
Exactly. And that fundamentally improves the quality of the strategic response.
That makes total sense. But if we are suddenly saving all these hours every single day, what is the ultimate goal for the environmental worker? Like, what are we doing with all that reclaimed time? Because the cynical view is that organizations will just use this to cut staff.
Yeah, but the source material presents a much more profound thesis than that. The overarching goal is to create more time for actual environmental impact.
Actual impact.
Right. I mean, typing dates into a spreadsheet does not save a coral reef. Formatting an outreach email does not plant a tree.
No, it doesn't.
The tragedy of the current system is that highly trained, passionate experts get bogged down in administrative bureaucracy. It literally keeps them away from the field work that actually moves the needle.
So the technology essentially absorbs the administrative friction so the human can get back to the core mission.
That is the ultimate value proposition. And the sources emphasize that these applications are not theoretical concepts waiting for some future breakthrough.
We're here now.
The tools are ready. They are being applied right now in wildlife monitoring, marine conservation tracking, climate reporting, NGO operations, environmental education. It's all happening.
So there's a real urgency here.
Definitely. The underlying message is one of urgency. AI agents are not something to put on a shelf and learn later. They are a practical toolkit to start experimenting with today.
Because the environment isn't waiting. The ecological problems we are facing are scaling exponentially, which means our solutions and our capacity to respond have to scale too.
Absolutely.
If we are stuck manually copy and pasting data, we will never catch up.
The mathematics of the crisis demand a scalable response. The more time you save on the back-end data management, the more direct physical impact you can create out in the world.
So what does this all mean for you listening, and how do you actually begin? Our sources leave us with a very clear, manageable call to action, which is start small.
Yeah, don't boil the ocean.
Exactly. Do not try to automate your entire organization's workflow overnight. Build one agent. Maybe just try setting up a version of that 7 a.m. daily intelligence report using a tool like Zapier and an LLM API.
That's a perfect first step.
Right. Just see how it changes your cognitive load in the morning. Then, once you're comfortable with that loop, build another. Identify one specific data point your organization tracks manually and teach your new digital project manager how to automate it.
It's a gradual transition of trust and capability. But as you stack these small automations, it leads to a fundamental shift in how we approach global challenges.
But the compounding effect must be huge.
It is. The definitive takeaway from the text is that the future of environmental work isn't just human effort alone, struggling against an avalanche of data.
Yeah.
It's human intuition, strategic judgment, and passion, paired with the speed, scale, and consistency of autonomous AI.
It's human plus AI working together to multiply outcomes.
Exactly.
It is a highly optimistic and powerful vision for the sector. But before we wrap up, based on everything we've unpacked today regarding the mechanics of these agents, what's a final thought you want to leave everyone with, something that pushes slightly past the text?
Well, the sources detail how an individual or an NGO can use an agent to monitor citizen science databases and flag anomalies 24/7.
Right.
But if we project the trajectory of that technology forward, it raises an incredibly important operational question. What happens when multiple agents start communicating with each other?
Wait, communicating with each other?
Yeah, if AI agents can monitor these databases around the clock, what happens when two different conservation NGOs agents start interacting?
Oh, wow.
Imagine an agent tracking ocean temperatures in the Pacific, autonomously communicating via API with another NGO's agent that is tracking seabird migrations.
They could share data instantly.
They could cross-reference their data sets, identify a hidden correlation, and combine their insights to solve an environmental crisis faster than humans even realize there's a problem.
Wow. We aren't just talking about proactive project managers working in isolation. We're talking about digital project managers collaborating across the globe at the speed of light.
Finding patterns in the noise that no single human could ever see.
That is a wild and deeply encouraging thought to end on. Well, that is our deep dive into the world of AI agents. From the reactive smart intern waiting for instructions to the proactive manager revolutionizing how we save the planet. We hope this sparks some concrete ideas for how you can reclaim your time, experiment with these new workflows, and amplify your own impact. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep exploring.